Okay, we've got Chapter 2, Section 1, the third part of this, relations and functions. We are going to talk about function notation, such as this. This is red, f of x. We're going to talk about f of x, and then we're going to use an equation, a function, f of x equals 5x plus 35. Notice this is a linear. This is a y equals mx plus b. Okay, the f of x takes the place of y. So this is linear. This is the graph of a line. It does pass the vertical line test, hence it is a function. And so we're going to use this function to find or evaluate the function at this x value, -1, this x value, +3, and then this, whatever the x value is, and then subtract 3 from it. So we're going to find those output values using this function. I'm going to do the same thing here. F of x, or y equals the opposite of x plus 2. And then on the back, we're going to use the following functions. And we got an f and a g function, an f of x and a g of y. And we're going to find f of -5, 7 times f of 8, and g of 1/2. And then, of course, we've got some fractions here. So that's going to be the lesson that we're going to go through today. Hopefully you have your copy of the notes, you printed it out, so that you have a good guide in terms of a notebook for completing your homework assignment. Okay, this notation right here is function notation, f parenthesis x, close parenthesis. You read this as f of x. It really means y is a function of x, okay? The f meaning function. Or sometimes you'll hear it referred to as a function f of x. Okay? Either phrase works for this. Note that f of x does not mean f times x. Okay, f of x does not mean f times x. It means we're going to evaluate the function at whatever this value is inside the parentheses. To evaluate a function, all you simply do is substitute the given value for the variable. Okay, so now we're going to go take a look at these examples. Again, I'm going to use this. This is my main function that I'm evaluating. And I'm going to find f of -1 on this function, f of 3 on this function, and f of x minus 3 on this function. So what we're really doing here is you are calculating, aka you're finding the y value for a given x value. Sort of like you're finding that ordered pair. If I know the x is -1, what would the y be? You're calculating the y value for a given x value on that function. And again, it's important to note that this f of x, that you know that that f of x replaces the y. Okay, so again, I did mention that this is linear. This is a y equals mx plus b, okay, or y equals 5x plus 35. But since we know this is a graph of a straight line and we know it's a function, we can replace the y with f of x, that function notation. Okay, you would never have f of x equals an equation that is not a function. Okay, so this means that yes, in fact, this is a function when I graph it. Okay, so now let's go and find f of -1. F of -1. Now remember, this is f of x, okay? So this -1 is an x value. So everywhere in this given function that I'm evaluating f of -1 at, everywhere there's an x here, I have to replace it with a -1. See, this x is being replaced with a -1. So this x is going to have to get replaced with a -1. So I've got 5x plus 35. Notice how I'm writing a parenthesis placeholder for it. And then what you're going to do is actually substitute this -1 in for it. Okay? So I'm just doing this and leaving it blank as an illustration to say, hey, first do the template, the parenthesis placeholder, and then substitute it in. On a test or a quiz, I would not write this and then this. I would simply just write this. This is just to illustrate. All right, so now I have to do PEMDAS. I have to do multiplication before addition. So 5 multiplied with -1 is -5 plus 35. And my value here is -5 plus 35 is 30. So f of -1 equals 30, which really means the ordered pair on the graph of this linear function, my x value is -1, excuse me, and my y value is 30. So I can conclude that the ordered pair, -1, 30, is on the graph of that function. Okay? This is just me explaining what this means. Your answer is going to be this, f of -1 equals 30. Okay, so I'm going to circle that as my final answer. All right, let's do the same thing and find f of 3. F of 3. Again, I'm using this 5x plus 35. 5, what do I put in place of this x? Well, I'm going to put the 3, right? This is f of x. X is 3. Oops, I didn't want to write it on the top one. That's okay. I could simply white it out. And now it's not there anymore. Okay, so back to this. 5 multiplied with 3 is 15 plus 35. That would be 35, 40, 50. So f of 3 is 50. That's my answer. That's what I was asked to evaluate, to find. If I wanted to know what this means, well, this means when x is 3 on the coordinate plane on the graph of this function, then my y value is 50. So 3, 50 is a point on the graph of f of x equals 5x plus 35. Okay, so that's what that means. All right, one more of this type using this same function, f of x subtract 3. Again, I'm going to worry about this part later. Okay, I'm just going to copy this down. 5 parenthesis for x plus 35. Now, 1 has to go in this open parenthesis. Well, the x minus 3 has to go in there. So I've got 5 parenthesis plus 35, and I'm going to substitute the x minus 3. Now I've got distributive property. 5x, subtract 15, add 35. Combine like terms. 5x, -15 plus 35 is 20. And that's all I could do with it because I don't know what x is. All I know is that f of x subtract 3 is equal to 5x plus 20. I can't really get an ordered pair here. I mean, my ordered pair really would be x minus 3, comma, 5x plus 20. That's the only thing I could say about it. I'd have to know what x is. So that's evaluating particular values on a given function. Now let's use this function and find f of -2, f of 0, and f of 3. It probably would be really nice if you paused the video and tried these on your own with this function, and then when you're done, press play. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video and tried these on your own. We're going to say f of -2 equals, look at what I've got here, negative parenthesis for x plus 2 equals negative parenthesis for x plus 2. Again, I'm just doing this part, writing this twice, just to illustrate to you. I'm going to put the -2 in there. The opposite of -2 is +2. And 2 plus 2 is 4. So f of -2 is 4. my ordered pair on the graph of this function. It is a function. It's linear. It's got a negative slope. -2, 4 is an ordered pair. It's not really asking me for that, but I'm just giving an extra little bit for that. F of 0 equals, again, the opposite of x plus 2 equals the opposite of what plus 2? Well, the opposite of 0. 0 doesn't have a sign. So it doesn't really matter. I can't take the opposite of 0. The opposite of 0 is still 0. This is 0 plus 2 or 2. So f of 0 is 2. And finally, f of 3 equals, again, everywhere I have an x, I'm going to put that open parenthesis just to illustrate in the notes. I'm going to write this again so I can show the substitution. I'm going to substitute a 3, right? That's f of x, or f of 3. The x value is 3. -3 plus 2 is -1. Therefore, f of 3 equals -1. So if you have questions on this, ask a question in class or post a comment on the homework discussion. Okay, I don't know if you have a question unless you ask. Side 2. Find using the functions. I've got an f function and I have a g function this time. You have to really be careful that you're using the correct function. This is find f of -5. This is an x on the f function, okay? This is an 8 on the f function. This is a 1/2 on the g function. Right here's the g function. So be careful that you know how you're setting these up. All right, so f of -5 equals, I have to be on the f function. This is the opposite of x plus 4. So I'm going to substitute right in here because we, by now, are used to not having to write, excuse me, the template up twice. The opposite of -5 is +5 plus 4 is 9. So f of -5 is 9. Not too bad. This one, you will find one like this on your quiz. So make sure you know how to do this one. This means 7, multiply it with f of 8. You have to find f of 8 first. This is 7, multiply it with f of 8. F is -x plus 4. And so I'm going to substitute the 8 in there. And so I've got 7 multiplied with, well, what's -8 plus 4? Well, that's -4. And 7 times -4 is -28. So I can conclude that 7 times f of 8 equals -28. Not so bad. It's just really substitution and knowing how to set it up. G now. G of 1/2. All right, well, I'm going to say G of 1/2 equals, I'm going to take the g function, 2/3. I'm going to leave my parenthesis placeholder and see this is g of y. I don't love this, but you know the book sometimes does do this. G of y. Variable is just y. So I'm going to leave a space for the variable. Okay, so if this is g of y, then y is 1/2. So wherever I have a y, I'm going to substitute a 1/2. All right, now make this easy on yourself. Look, this is multiplication of two fractions. This numerator and this denominator are the same. They're going to divide each other out. Or multiply it. This is 2/6, which is going to simplify to 1/3. So however which way you want to think about it, this is 1/3 plus 5. Now, you can use a calculator, but then I know you're going to give me decimals, and I do not want any decimals here. No, 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 no. You can convert 5 into thirds. You know, ask yourself a question. 5 equals how many thirds? 5 equals how many thirds? All you do is you multiply this. 15. Do you agree that 5 equals 15 divided by 3? So I'm going to erase this. I wrote this in pencil. And I'm going to say, well, this is 1/3 plus 15 thirds. right? Because 5 is how many thirds? You multiply the 5 and the 3, you get 15. And when I add 1/3 plus 15 thirds, I get 16 thirds. So G of 1/2 equals 16 thirds. Please give me the fractions. I don't want any decimals. No decimals. Fractions only. Okay, so make sure you're converting any decimal, if you do this on the calculator, back to fraction form. Let's look at the next one. The next one's a fraction. I need to find f of 3, I need to find g of 3, and then I need to divide them. F of 3, g of 3 equals, well, what's my f function? Negative x plus 4. What's my g function? 2/3 variable plus 5. I'm going to substitute. I'm going to put a 3 here. And I'm going to rewrite the 3 as 3/1. Only because this is a fraction and I want to keep this looking, you know, like a fraction. Alright, let's look here. Negative 3 plus 4 is 1. What's happening here? The 3's are going to divide out. This is leaving me with 2/1 or 2. What's 2 plus 5? 7. So f of 3 divided by g of 3 equals 1/7. It's not too terrible if you know how to set it up. This one looks a little crazy. F of g of 2. Folks, you have to do the inside first, just like PEMDAS. You do what's inside the parentheses first. Okay, so I'm going to find g of 2 first. Okay, so I'm going to say f of g of 2. Over off on the side, I'm going to find g of 2. I could show my work up here. G of 2. I'm not going to show it up there. I'm going to show it down here. G of 2 equals the g function 2/3 y plus 5. My value is 2, or 2/1. So g of 2 equals 4/3 plus 5, but remember we knew 5 was 15/3. And 4/3 and 15/3 is 19/3. This is what g of 2 is. Now I have to find f of g of 2, which really means I'm finding f of g of 2 is 19/3. So now find this. Well, the f function is negative x plus 4. My x value is 19/3. I have to put these together. It's a fraction and a whole number, so I have to convert 4 to thirds. So I've got negative 19/3 plus 4 is how many thirds? Well, that's 12/3. So negative 19/3 plus 12/3 is negative 7/3. So guess what? F of g of 2 equals negative 7/3. Okay, the setup and the process of simplifying it, it just comes with practice. So see what you can do with the homework problems. And again, if you have any questions, post a comment on the discussion or ask a question in class. That's the best way that I can help you. Have a great day.